What is it with guys? That more is always better, that bigger is always better. Go big or go home. You know, I have a theory when it comes to food. Most of you know this about me, that if one is good, two is better. Now, you probably heard me say that a lot of times at the church dinners. If one piece of pie is good, two is got to be better. See, Kim, she can have a package of candy or cookies in her desk, and she can, eat one or two a day, or she can run off that package for 2 weeks. Now, me, I can't do that. If I eat one, I'm going to eat two, I'm going to eat four. If I start eating, I'll eat the whole package. You know, when the kids were little, they used to cry because I would find their Oreo cookies that Kim had bought for them to snack on and for lunches, and I would get the bag of cookies and a glass of milk, and I'd eat the whole thing. And so Kim and the kids, they always had to hide the goodies from me. If one is good, two is better. That's why I can't go to Costco. Man, Costco drives me crazy. It's like a zoo for giant food. And I'll come out of there with big old boxes of cookies and big old bags of Mike and Ike's. I don't save any money. I just buy a bunch more stuff that I absolutely don't need. But get this. The point today is that our culture has made this philosophy, it's taken it way beyond food. Our culture teaches us this theory that everything, if one is good, then two is better. That more is always better. If having $1 is good, then having two is better. If having one car is good, then having two is better. If having one kid is good, then having 6 kids is better. No? Anyway, see, Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, the book we're going to take our text from today, and the guy had 100 wives. If ever there was a guy that lived this theory, it was Solomon, and he had 100 wives. One time this guy asked his professor in seminary, he said, "Why did Solomon have so many wives?" And the seminary professor said, "Well, that way, hopefully, when he come home, he could find at least one of them in a good mood." Well, all right, but even if you go all the way back to the Garden of Eden, you can see a form of this lie: if one is good, two is better. And you know the story. God created everything, and he said it was good, and then he created man, and he said it was good, but then he said, it's not good for him to be alone. And so he put Adam to sleep, and he took a rib out of Adam, and out of that rib he made the woman, and Adam and Eve, and Adam woke up, and he goes, "Whoa, man." And so from then on, God said, "Be fruitful and multiply and eat from any tree in the garden except one." Except that one tree. And what does Satan do? He comes along and he says, "Did God really say you couldn't eat from that one tree? Because here's the deal. If you do, you'll be like God." And that's when the tempter, what he was really saying was, you get everything if you eat from that tree. What he was saying was, you have to have everything to be happy. If you don't get what you don't have, then you'll never be happy. More is better. And when I was in college, I spent a lot of time at my grandma's house on my dad's side, and Grandma had this huge garden. She had this huge strawberry plot. And we had strawberries all the time, all the strawberries you could ever want. And so that summer that I was down there, I ate so many strawberries. You know, she'd make homemade shortcake and we'd have ice cream. And I ate so many strawberries that I actually became allergic to strawberries. I broke out with hives because I ate so many strawberries. And I'd never been allergic before. And so, you know, the same thing when I worked for the lumber company. Some vendors took us on this trip, and we were in this fancy restaurant, and they were paying for everything, and this place was known for its lobster, and so I ate an 8-pound lobster. 8-pound lobster. This thing was 40 years old. It was older than me at the time. I ate so much lobster that I actually overdosed on lobster. I don't know if it was iodine or what it was, but I had every symptom of food poisoning. If 1-pound lobster is good, then an 8-pound lobster has to be better, and that's the lie. And here's the truth of today's message. It's better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. It's better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. Our text is Ecclesiastes 4:6. Better 1 handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Better 1 handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Or, say it this way, better 1 handful than 2. Why is 1 handful better than 2? Well, if I got 1 handful, then guess what I have? I have a free hand. And if I've got 1 free hand, then I can help someone else who needs helping. You know, I can lend a hand. You know, Jesus hit this principle right on the head when he said in Luke 12:15, he was talking to a group of people, and he was teaching to them, and he said, watch out, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, because a man's life does not consist of the abundance of his possessions. Watch out, he said. Be on your guard, because more is not always better. Watch out for greed, because your life does not consist of what you do not have. And then he told this parable about a fella. He said, once upon a time there was this guy, and he had a very successful business, and this man said to himself, man, I'm going to tear down all my old barns, and I'm going to build new ones, bigger ones, better ones, that'll hold more, and I'm going to kick back, and I'm going to take my ease, and I'm going to drink, and I'm going to be merry, and I'm going to be happy. And remember how the parable went? Jesus said on that very night his life was taken from him. See, here's what Jesus said at the end of that story in verse 31. He said, this is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself and is not rich toward God. This is how to be if we're not rich toward God. See, this is like anyone who says more, more, more. Chasing after the wind, but doesn't have what matters most, a true and a vibrant and a current relationship with God. See, God doesn't care so much about what we have. He just doesn't want what we have to have us. That's the real issue. That's why it's better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does matter. Better 1 handful with tranquility and peace than 2 handfuls with chasing after the wind and toiling. So it's better to have what does matter. If it's better to have what does matter, then I want to ask you to define very clearly in your life what really matters to you. I want to ask you to define in your life what is the most important thing. Now, I want you to think about this, and I want you to answer this in your mind. What matters the most to you? And so, let me give you a little help. Let's just say, for instance, that you went to the doctor and you've been sick or whatever, and the doctor said to you, you have 1 month to live. What you would be focused on in that 1 month to live, that is the stuff that is the most important to you at that moment. At that moment, if you had 30 days left at that moment, see, that would be what's important. You know, if I polled this group and I said, what is the most important thing to you? I'm sure the most common answer would be God. God is the most important to me, pleasing God, glorifying God, knowing God, serving God. You know, the second most likely answer would be my family, probably, my kids, my children, that they be fully devoted followers of Christ. Some people might say my church. Some people might say making a difference, making God known, showing the love of Christ. Some people might say having all my relatives and loved ones come to know Christ. But no one for sure would say the most important thing to me is making money, is my job, is my stuff, is my cars, my house. No one would say that the number one thing is my Facebook friends, or how many that I can have, or my TV shows, or what type of phone that I have. Nobody would make those kinds of answers, yet most often the things that people spend all their energy on, pursuing those things, are not the things that they really believe are the most important. So I want to encourage you to do what I call one handful living. Now I borrowed that phrase, one handful living, but I really like it. And so many of us, so often, we're grasping for everything. And better is one handful with tranquility than two with toil. So that raises the question then. How can we live a one handful life? How do I really stop grasping for everything and focus on what really counts? Well, first of all, we've got to let go of what doesn't matter. We got to let go of what doesn't matter. If we're going to live a one handful life, let go of the things that really don't matter that much. In Hebrews 12:1, Paul wrote this. In the NIV it says, let us throw off everything that hinders. The Living Bible says, let us strip off anything that slows us down or holds us back. The English version, today's English version, let us rid ourselves of everything that gets in the way. The Message Bible puts it this way, strip down, start running, never quit, no extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. Let us throw off anything and everything that hinders us from running this race well. Now this Greek word that's translated here to throw off really is kind of a violent throwing down. One of the things I hate in the springtime in the woods, if you're turkey hunting, you're going through the woods, I hate spider webs. And you'll be walking along and all of a sudden you'll go through that spider web and it'll be all over your face and your hands, and then you'll feel that spider running down your neck. And when that happens, I don't just gingerly reach back and try to grab that little spider and set him down on a leaf. No, man, I am throwing, grabbing at that spider, trying to get that thing off. And that's the picture, to cast down, to throw down violently, to jerk it off, get rid of it, that everything that gets in the race that is marked out by God for us, everything that gets in the way of that, we throw it down. But see, here's what the enemy says to us. He says, hey, wait a minute. Look what you're missing out on. You're doing all this, you got all this, but what about that? What about that? You don't have that. And you have to discipline yourself to say, no, I'm going to throw that down. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to have one handful living. One handful living. Three phrases that I believe will help you with this. Three phrases that I want us to focus on. Cut back, throw out, and turn off. How do I do one handful living? Cut back, throw out, and turn off. So that's what we need to do. We've talked about this before, different ways, different times, but cutting back. What do you need to cut back? I don't know what you need to cut back on, but I would venture to say that most of us in this room, if we said, hey, I need to cut back on something, it would be spending and schedules. Spending and schedules. Let's start with spending. Better one handful living. Better less with tranquility and financial margin than two handfuls with financial noose around my neck. Better is one handful with money left over at the end of the month than to be fretting and worrying and stewing about where we're going to get money. And how stupid it is in this world that we take money that we don't really have and we buy things that we don't really need to impress people that we don't really like, and then at the end of the month we're out of money and we're struggling. Better to cut back. The other thing is schedules. For some of you, you need to be very prayerful and very determined to cut back on the stuff that's making you hurry and rush through life. We rush through life. We hurry through life. And I've told you many, many times that hurry is the great enemy of a spiritual life. You don't do anything well when you're in a hurry. Your testimony is not good when you're in a hurry. And we need to cut back on the things in our life that make us so rushed and so hurried. When you ask somebody how they're doing, what's the number one answer you get? Well, I'm busy. Oh, I'm just busy, you know. I'm tired. You know, I'm busy, busy, busy. That's always what we say. Man, when's the last time you said to somebody, hey, man, how are you doing? And they said, man, I'm just kicking back. I'm so relaxed right now. I'm just not rushing. I'm not in a hurry. I've got all the time that I ever need. But the culture has us thinking that you know, better is more. The more stuff we can do, the more stuff we can have our kids involved in, the more we can jam into our schedules. And do you think the God who said that those who are weary and heavy laden can come to me and rest, do you think the God that said that is pleased when we are so stressed and rushed and hurried through life? So the other thing is that we need to throw some things out. We need to cut back. We need to throw out. We need to get rid of some things. You know, so many people drown themselves in clutter. They just don't put anything away. They just accumulate stuff and keep stuff. You know, stop hoarding. If you haven't worn it in a year, if you haven't used it in a year, give it to somebody who can use it. Chances are you don't even remember that you've had it. If you haven't seen it in a year, it's probably lost anyway. Throw out some stuff. You know, my favorite example of this, and I know it hits a little too close to home for some of us, but it's the person who has a full garage of stuff, and a $20,000 or $30,000 vehicle is sitting out in the driveway, in the rain, in the snow, and but them old sneakers and that old glove is in there under cover. You know, throw out some things. Clean out the closets. Clean off the tables. Empty out the basement and the garage. Cut back, throw out, and turn off. Turn off. Some of us need to turn some things off. You know, I don't know what you need to turn off, but some of you need to turn something off. You're wasting your life with this stuff. I mean, here's the deal. You're never going to change the world. You're never going to be what Christ wants you to be sitting in front of the TV. Some of you need to turn the TV off. Some of you need to turn your computer off. Get off the internet. Some of you need to turn your cell phones off. It's become an idol in your life. You stroke it, you caress it, you talk to it like it's your child. You know, Facebook, words with friends, Twitter, all that stuff. I'm telling you, some of us could change our family if we would just turn the stupid things off. You know, I see some of you on your phone in church. You know, what are you afraid you're going to miss? I mean, are you really that bored that you got to be sitting in church? Turn the phone off. Better is one handful with tranquility than two with toil. Some of you need to do some serious throwing down, casting off, and letting go of what doesn't matter. Two things that we need to do. Let go of what doesn't matter. And number two, I want to encourage you to fight for what does matter. Fight for what does matter. In the Old Testament, Nehemiah, he was building a wall. He was trying to rebuild Jerusalem, and he was facing opposition, and he was facing hurdles and barriers and people. And listen to what he said in Nehemiah 4, verse 10. He said, "And I looked and arose and said to the nobles, to the leaders, and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, your houses." Anything worth having, anything of value and substance, you've got to fight for it. You've got to work for it. You've got to hang on to it, to keep it. Fight for what's important. Fight for your testimony as a Christian. Hang on to that. For your family, your marriage, your kids, your church. Fight like a man of God, like a woman of God. Fight for it. Don't let this culture lie to you. Don't let it strip it away from you. Don't waste your life. Focus on and work for and fight for what matters the most. Less of what doesn't matter, more of what does matter. See, your life is too valuable. Your calling is too great. Your God is too good to waste your life on things that just don't really matter. Stand with me as the Musicians come. God created you and put you on this earth to glorify Him, to make a difference in the lives of the people around you, to make Him known, to love Him, and to love people. Remember what Jesus said? He said, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Your life does not consist of the abundance of things that you have, the busyness of your life. Busyness and hurriedness is not a badge of honor. Better one handful with tranquility than two with toil. And I'll admit to you, I've always been a two-handful person all my life. That's what was wrong with my life. You know, better one handful in a good marriage. Better one handful in children that know you and you know them. Better one handful in making a difference in life. Better one handful with intimate friends. Better one handful with a great relationship with God. Better one handful with influence. Better one handful with margin and room in my finances. Better one handful in love than two handfuls with toil, stress, panting, greed, war, chasing after the wind, because it's infinitely better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. His heads are bowed and eyes are closed.